Have you ever spent your whole life proving your love to people, only to discover they only valued what you could give them? I never thought my own family would be the ones to teach me that lesson. 15 minutes before my father's 60th birthday celebration, I received a message that completely changed the way I saw the people closest to me. I was standing inside my luxury apartment, looking at the final details of the surprise I had planned. The room was filled with memories, old photographs of my father and me, pictures from my childhood, moments when he held my hand and promised me that we would always have each other. I had spent weeks preparing everything. The restaurant was booked, the guests were invited, a special video showing my father's life was ready, and the most important thing, I had prepared a gift that I knew would make him emotional. It was the one thing he had always dreamed about, a new home where he could finally relax after years of hard work. I smiled while looking at the gift box, because despite everything that had happened between us recently, he was still my father, and I still loved him. Then my phone suddenly vibrated. I looked at the screen. It was a message from my stepmother, Victoria. At first, I thought she was checking if everything was ready. Maybe she wanted to thank me, but when I opened it, my heart stopped. The message said, "Don't come to your father's birthday tonight. You don't deserve to be there." I froze. I read the words again. Maybe I misunderstood. Maybe there was some mistake. So I replied, "What are you talking about? I planned this entire celebration for Dad." A few seconds later, another message appeared. "Exactly. You always think money can fix everything. You think because you're successful, you can control this family." I stared at the screen. Control? Was that really what she thought? For years, I had used my success to help them. When my father struggled financially, I helped. When they wanted to move into a better neighborhood, I paid for it. When Victoria needed expensive medical treatments, I covered the costs without hesitation. I never reminded them. I never asked for anything in return, because I believed family was not about keeping score. But Victoria continued, "Tonight is for real family, not someone who thinks she is better than everyone else." Those words hurt, not because she insulted my money, but because she questioned my place in my own father's life. My name is Beth Morgan, and this is the story of how the family I built up was the same family that tried to leave me behind, until they discovered what they had lost. I wasn't always wealthy. People often looked at my life and assumed I was lucky. They saw the company I built, the beautiful house, the successful career, but they never saw the years of struggle behind it. I grew up with my father, Richard Morgan, in a small town. My mother passed away when I was young. After that, my father became my entire world. He worked 2 jobs to make sure I had everything I needed. Even when he was exhausted, he would come home and ask, "Beth, how was your day?" He made me feel important. He taught me one thing that stayed with me forever. Never forget the people who stood beside you when you had nothing. I carried those words into adulthood. That was why, when I became successful, my first thought was my father. I wanted to give him the comfortable life he deserved. I wanted him to enjoy the years he spent sacrificing for me. But I never expected that one day, the same people I wanted to protect would make me feel like I didn't belong. When people see someone successful, they usually see the final result. They see the expensive house, the nice car, the confidence, the lifestyle. But they rarely see the lonely nights, the failures, and the sacrifices behind it. My journey was not easy. After college, I didn't inherit anything. I didn't have powerful connections. I didn't have someone opening doors for me. I started with a small idea and a lot of determination. I spent years building my company from nothing. There were times when I worked until sunrise. There were moments when I questioned whether I would ever succeed. But every time I felt like giving up, I remembered my father, the man who sacrificed everything for me, the man who skipped his own dreams so I could chase mine. When my company finally became successful, the first person I called was my father. I still remember his reaction. He was silent for a few seconds. Then he said, "Beth, I always knew you could do something amazing." Those words meant more to me than any award or achievement. Because my father's approval was always important to me. That was why I never hesitated to help him. When he and Victoria wanted to buy a bigger house, I helped them. When my father wanted to retire early, I supported him. When their expenses increased, I never complained. I thought I was taking care of the people who took care of me. But after Victoria became part of our lives, something slowly changed. At first, she was kind. She would call me the daughter I always wanted. She would tell everyone how proud she was of my success. But over time, I started noticing something. Her kindness appeared mostly when she needed something. If she wanted a favor, she was warm. If she needed financial help, she was loving. But when I needed support, she was always too busy. I tried not to judge her. I kept telling myself, maybe I'm imagining things, because I didn't want to believe someone in my family could see me only as a source of money. A few months before my father's birthday, I had an idea. My father had recently mentioned that he missed the old days. He said life had become too complicated. He missed the simple moments. So I decided to make his 60th birthday unforgettable. I planned everything secretly. I rented a beautiful private room at his favorite restaurant. I collected old pictures from my childhood. I contacted some of his old friends. I even created a video with messages from people whose lives he had touched. But the biggest surprise was something else. I had purchased a beautiful vacation home near the lake. My father always talked about having a peaceful place where he could spend his retirement. I wanted to give him that dream. I remember standing in the showroom, signing the final documents. The agent looked at me and said, "You must really love your father." I smiled. "I do. He deserves it." At that moment, I had no idea that only hours later, I would receive a message telling me I didn't deserve to celebrate his birthday. On the day of the celebration, everything was ready. I wore a dress my father loved. I carried the gift box carefully. I was excited. I imagined his face when he saw the surprise. But then Victoria's message arrived. "Don't come tonight. You don't deserve this family." I felt something inside me change. For years, I had ignored small signs. I ignored the comments. I ignored the distance. I ignored the feeling that I was only valued when I was useful. But that message made everything clear. I called my father. He answered after a few rings. "Hey, Beth, are you on your way?" I opened my mouth to speak. I wanted to tell him everything. I wanted him to ask why Victoria would say something so cruel. But before I could explain, I heard Victoria in the background. "Who is it?" my father replied. "It's Beth." There was a pause. Then Victoria said loudly, "Tell her we're busy." My father didn't defend me. He didn't ask what happened. He simply said, "Beth, maybe we should talk another time." Those words hurt more than Victoria's message. Because from my father, I expected protection. I expected him to choose me, but instead he chose silence. I looked at the birthday gift sitting beside me, the dream home, the surprise, everything I had prepared, and for the first time in my life, I decided not to give. Not because I stopped loving my father, but because I finally realized I needed to love myself too. For years, I believed love meant always showing up. No matter how tired I was, no matter how hurt I felt, no matter how many times people disappointed me, I always showed up. But that night was different. I looked at the birthday gift sitting on my table, the keys to the vacation home I bought for my father, a gift that represented years of his sacrifices and everything I wanted to give back to him. I picked up the box. For a moment, I thought about driving to the restaurant anyway. I thought about ignoring Victoria's message. I thought about walking inside and pretending nothing happened. Because that was what I always did. I was always the person who fixed things, the person who apologized first, the person who tried harder. But then I looked at my phone again. I read those words one more time. "You don't deserve this family." And something inside me finally changed. I realized I had spent years trying to prove that I belonged somewhere I was never asked to leave. I put the gift box down. I removed my dress. I canceled the reservation I had made, and I stayed home. For the first time in years, I chose myself. The next morning, my phone started ringing. It was my father. I looked at the screen for a long time. Part of me wanted to answer immediately. The little girl inside me still wanted to hear him say, "Beth, I'm sorry." But another part of me remembered how alone I felt the night before. I finally answered, "Hello, Dad." There was silence. Then he asked, "Why didn't you come?" I took a deep breath. "I think you already know." He sounded confused. "What are you talking about?" I couldn't believe it. After everything, he didn't even know. I said, "Dad, Victoria told me not to come. She said I don't deserve to celebrate your birthday with the family." The silence that followed was heavy. For a few seconds, nobody spoke. Then my father said, She said that? Yes. I waited. I waited for him to defend me. I waited for him to say he was sorry. But instead, he said, "I'm sure there must be some misunderstanding." Those words broke my heart, because he wasn't angry. He wasn't shocked. He was trying to explain her behavior. I realized something painful. My father didn't know how much I had been hurt because I had spent years hiding it. I always smiled. I always said I was fine. I always made things easier for everyone else. So nobody noticed when I was the one struggling. After that conversation, I stopped doing the things I always did. I stopped calling every morning. I stopped checking if my father needed anything. I stopped solving problems before anyone even asked. And suddenly, people noticed. A week passed, then 2. My father called more often. At first, his conversations were casual. "Beth, how is work? Beth, everything okay?" But I knew he was trying to understand why I had changed. Then one evening, he asked, "Did I hurt you?" That question surprised me, because for the first time, he was not defending himself. He was listening. I answered honestly, "Yes, Dad, you did." I told him everything, not just about the birthday message, but about all the moments I felt invisible. The times Victoria made comments about my money, the times she treated me like an outsider, the times I felt like I was only important when I could provide something. My father listened quietly. Then he said something I never expected. I had no idea, and that was the saddest part. He didn't know, because I had spent years protecting him from the truth. A few days later, something unexpected happened. My father called me and asked me to meet him alone. When I arrived, he looked serious. He said, "Beth, there is something you need to know about Victoria." I looked at him. "What happened?" He took a deep breath. "She lied to me." I was confused. About what? My father explained that after my birthday incident, he started paying attention to things he had ignored before. He noticed how Victoria talked about me when I wasn't around. He noticed how often she brought up my money. He noticed that many of her decisions were based on what I could provide. And then he discovered something that shocked him. Victoria had been telling him for months that I didn't care about him, that I only helped him because I wanted control. But the truth was the complete opposite. I had been the one trying to keep our family together. My father looked at me with tears in his eyes. "Beth, I should have listened to you." For the first time in a long time, I saw my father realizing the truth, but the biggest surprise was still coming, because Victoria had no idea that the person she pushed away was the same person who had been protecting her lifestyle for years. And soon, she was going to learn exactly what she had lost. After my father finally opened his eyes, everything started changing. For the first time in years, he began seeing things clearly. He started remembering all the moments when I had been there for him. The hospital visits, the financial problems I helped solve, the difficult days when I was the only person who answered his calls. He realized something painful. He had been listening to the wrong person, but there was still one person who refused to admit the truth. Victoria. She believed she had done nothing wrong. She believed I was the problem, and she had no idea that her actions were about to change her entire life. A few days later, my father asked me to come to his house. When I arrived, Victoria was sitting in the living room. The moment she saw me, her expression changed. She looked uncomfortable. I could tell she wasn't expecting me. My father looked at both of us. Then he said, "We need to talk about what happened." Victoria immediately became defensive. "Richard, I already told you. Beth misunderstood everything." I stayed quiet. For years, I had argued. I had tried to explain myself. But this time, I wanted the truth to speak for itself. My father looked at her and said, "No, Victoria. I saw the messages." Her face changed. "What messages?" "The ones you sent Beth on my birthday." The room became silent. Victoria looked nervous. Then she said, "She was being selfish. She always thinks money gives her power." I looked at her, and for the first time I didn't feel angry. I felt disappointed. Because even after everything, she still couldn't admit what she had done. My father shook his head. "Beth never used money to control us. She used it to help us." Victoria didn't answer. Then my father continued. "When we needed help, who was there? Nobody spoke. When the house payments became difficult, who helped us? Silence. When I needed someone beside me, who answered every time?" Victoria looked away, because she knew the answer. It was me. Then my father revealed something that shocked everyone. He had reviewed the financial records from the past few years. He realized that most of the things Victoria enjoyed, the comfortable house, the vacations, the lifestyle, were possible because of my support. I never mentioned it. I never used it against them. I never wanted credit. But now the truth was impossible to ignore. My father looked at Victoria and said, "You made my daughter feel unwanted in the same home she helped build." Those words were powerful, because my father finally understood. The person who had been treated like an outsider was the person who had done the most for us. After that conversation, I decided something important. I didn't want revenge. I didn't want to hurt Victoria. I didn't want to destroy anyone's life. I simply wanted respect. I told my father, "I don't need anyone to choose me because of what I can give. I need people to choose me because I'm family." My father became emotional. He said, "Beth, I'm sorry I let you feel alone." Those words were difficult to hear, because a part of me had waited years for them. But forgiveness was not something that happened overnight. Trust takes time, and I knew our relationship would have to be rebuilt. A month later, I made another decision. I changed the way I helped my family. Before, I gave because I was afraid of losing them. Now, I gave only when there was love and respect. I stopped trying to buy a place in people's hearts, because I finally understood something. The right people will appreciate your heart, not just your success, not just your money, not just what you can do for them. Meanwhile, Victoria started facing the consequences of her choices. Without my constant support, she realized how much she had taken for granted. She tried calling me. At first, I didn't answer, not because I hated her, but because I needed time. Eventually, I agreed to meet her. She looked different. The confidence she once had was gone. She said, "Beth, I owe you an apology." I listened. She continued, "I was jealous of you. I saw everything you achieved, and instead of being proud of you, I felt threatened." For the first time, Victoria admitted the truth. She wasn't angry because I did something wrong. She was angry because my success reminded her of her own insecurities. I accepted her apology, but I also told her, an apology can fix words, but it takes time to fix broken trust. She nodded, because she knew I was right. Months later, my father celebrated another birthday. This time, things were different. There were no fake smiles, no hidden messages, no pretending. My father looked at me and said, "I almost lost the person who loved me the most." I smiled. Because sometimes people only understand your value when they realize what life feels like without you. But the story wasn't over yet, because my father still had one final surprise for me, a way to show me that he finally understood everything. Months had passed since the night Victoria sent that message, a message that was supposed to push me away, a message that was supposed to make me feel small. But instead, it became the moment when I finally understood my own worth. I stopped chasing people who only remembered me when they needed something. I stopped proving that I was a good daughter, because I had always been one. I didn't need anyone's permission to know that. On my father's next birthday, I received a call early in the morning. I looked at my phone. It was Dad. For a moment, I smiled. Not because everything was suddenly perfect, but because our relationship was finally becoming honest again. I answered, "Happy birthday, Dad." There was a pause. Then he said, "Beth, there's something I want you to see." A few hours later, I arrived at my father's house. When I walked inside, I noticed something immediately. The old pictures were on the walls. Pictures of my childhood. Pictures of my father holding my hand. Pictures of the two of us before life became complicated. My father stood there looking emotional. Then he handed me a small envelope. I opened it. Inside was a letter. It said, "To my daughter Beth," the person who never stopped believing in me, even when I failed to see her pain. I looked up at him. My father wiped his eyes. "Beth, I spent so much time accepting your help that I forgot to show you how much you meant to me." I didn't say anything. I just listened. He continued, "You gave me more than money. You gave me your time, your love, and your loyalty, and I made you feel like you had to earn your place in my life." Those words were difficult, because they were true. My father then told me something I never expected. He had decided to make changes in his life. He wanted our relationship to be about love again. Not about what I could provide, not about what I could fix, just about being father and daughter. That was the moment I realized something important. Sometimes people make mistakes because they don't understand what they have until they almost lose it. My father wasn't perfect. Victoria wasn't perfect. And I wasn't perfect either. But the difference was, I was finally surrounded by people who were willing to admit their mistakes. A year later, my life looked completely different. My company continued growing. My success continued. But the biggest change wasn't financial. It was personal. I learned boundaries. I learned that helping people doesn't mean allowing them to disrespect you. I learned that love should never feel like a one-way street. And most importantly, I learned that my value was never decided by someone else's opinion, not even my family's. As for Victoria, our relationship changed. We were never as close as I once hoped we would be, but there was respect. She apologized sincerely, and I chose to forgive her, not because what she did was okay, but because I didn't want anger to control my life. Holding on to pain would only hurt me. Letting go allowed me to move forward. Looking back, that text message 15 minutes before my father's birthday was one of the most painful moments of my life. But it was also the moment that opened my eyes. Because sometimes losing people teaches you something valuable. Sometimes walking away shows people your true worth. And sometimes the person everyone underestimates becomes the person everyone regrets losing. I didn't need to prove that I belonged. I didn't need to show anyone my bank account. I didn't need to remind anyone of everything I had done. My actions had already spoken. The people who truly love you will see your heart, not your money, not your success, not what you can give them, just you. And that was the greatest lesson I ever learned. Because the biggest revenge isn't making someone suffer. The biggest revenge is becoming so strong that you no longer need their approval.